Hello and welcome to another Raggy's review. So in this review I'm going to be talking about yesterday we went to Castle Beer Festival, or as they call it, Nottingham Independence Castle Beer Festival. It seems a long drawn out name, that does. The camera used to have the Robin Hood Beer Festival there, and for me it needs to be called Nottingham Castle Beer Festival or just Castle Beer Festival. The independence doesn't need to be a part of this, equation. It's as simple as that. Nonetheless, the castle, a former workplace of Raggy's Beer Reviews, worked between there and the Arboretum and the city centre for 22 years. So I know the castle. It is not the same castle I remember. Gone are the flower beds. Gone are the lawns that looked amazing. It is very much a scruffy looking bit of park to an entrance to the castle. Yeah, it was winning Britain in Blooms when we were there. You won't win anything now, It's got a nice big building at the front. And obviously you've got the castle itself, the museum. Although technically it's not a castle anyway, more of a mansion house, but but it is in Nottingham, it brings people to the city. I can never understand why they didn't build a replica castle on that lawn, or even below in the brewhouse yard, build a replica castle, so that, for people who are disappointed that they're into castle there, at least you can see it. A Disney-fied castle at third scale. It wouldn't be an hard thing to build. Not these days. If Disney can do it, then everybody else can do it. But hey, So onwards with the beer festival. We queued outside. The queuing was good. Andy had the tickets, and the young lady from Castle Rock Brewery, I can't remember her name, but and we know each other's. She scanned the QR code. It was easy enough. Walked in, and the boss of Castle Rock Brewery was there, handing out the plastic glasses. So these, I ain't got one on me. I was going to bring one down the shed, but they're in the dishwasher. So they're plastic glasses, got all the breweries on, printed on, the logos all the way around, and got the glass. Then walked in, and it was a painless process. There were people doing bag checks. Obviously, bag checks these days is a thing. If you've got a bag, it's got to be checked. We don't want some idiot bringing a bomb or a gun or knives in. None of us want that. So it walks in, and loads of toilets to the left initially. I never actually saw that bit again. I just didn't look that way, obviously. Walked along. There was some eatery, there was some random things on this side. I looked and I thought, well, that's not beer. Food. Food. Oh, random. And I ignored the random. Absolutely ignored it. I ain't gone to a beer festival to look at random. Food, obviously. You want to clock the food, and then you want to clock the beer. First tent we got to was Shipston's. Now, Shipston's, Hollerstone Brewing Company, and Hockley Hell's Lager, or whatever they call it. It was all in one tent. It is technically all the same brewery. Good range of cask and keg on there. And it was good support there. Walked round the corner. Black Iris Brewery. They had cask and keg on. In theirs. Next one along was Grumpy Fish Brewery. He was set back a little bit. He had his lines on, although on the Saturday half the lines had already gone at opening. So God knows how long they lasted, because if half the lines have already gone, it don't bode well for the rest of the night at 5 o'clock. Next along was, I think Blue Monkey was next along. Yeah, I'm sure it was Blue Monkey. Blue Monkey, by far the best of the breweries there. Their range of beers, keg, cask, the fridge with cans in. Good range of cask on the bar, loads of beers that you hadn't seen before. Very interesting. I'll get on to that in another video about Blue Monkey. But yeah, it bodes well for the future. Next along, Nottingham breweries. Trying to remember where they all were. They had a good range of their cask on. Quite a few beers actually. Some I'd not seen before. But yeah, predominantly just cask beer from them. I never did find the Stenton Cider Company, so God knows where they were. Walks around the corner from them. Castle Rock Brewery were there. I never actually got to Castle Rock Brewery's bar. There was a queue and a half straight away when I got there, and I thought, oh, I'm not queuing. Not straight away, I'm not queuing. So I walked by theirs. Liquid Light were at the back, right at the back against the wall, which I think was the best place for all the breweries. And again, I'll get to that in my review. And then there was eateries, about 4 eateries altogether. Then there was Magpie Brewery. And then there was a ducky place selling ducks and Nottingham stuff. That was good. Yeah, it was good to see. Because people might have come from outside of Nottingham to visit. Lenton Lane Brewery were there. One interesting thing I noticed on their bar, they had the range of beers. So you had an 8.4%. A third was £3.25, which, that's not bad. £3.25 for an 8.4%. Good pricing. 10%, £6. Bloody hell. That is some jump in cost. Yeah. Oof. I don't know if that's the duty thing or what, but that is a jump. Yeah. And all of our lots, I'm not paying £6. Not when there's one like 2% less for £3. Literally half the price. Obviously, everyone does what they do. So next to Lenton Lane that I can remember was Neon Raptor, and that's as far as I can. Oh, and then Lincoln Green on the end. I nearly forgot Lincoln Green. So yeah, the bandstand had music on. There was actually music playing at the gate when we first went in. The pubs, obviously, I don't know if it was right when they said there were 3,000 people got tickets for both days or each day. I don't know about the numbers, so that doesn't, it's not for me to worry about. But it was really, really busy, and the pubs around there, the beer pubs, the real ale pubs, they must have had their best night in a long time. The crafty, whatever they call it, crafty crow, Fothergills, they were rammed to the hills, in and outside. So they must have had a damn good afternoon and night afterwards. I mean, afterwards we went to the barrel drop because it got really, really cold. And again, that was really good as well. So I'll give you my review now. Pricing, tenner, plastic glass. Don't agree with the plastic glass, but at least it wasn't a pissy weak plastic glass. It was quite a rigid plastic glass. It's gone in the dishwasher tonight, come out clean. We're going to use them in the house for the kids. The beer, I wasn't taking a glass. I was going to take a glass because I really don't like the idea of plastic glasses. But in the end, I couldn't be bothered to walk through town with glasses. You fall over it, and yeah. So I thought there was a good range of beer. But on the second night, because that's the night we went, the beers were falling at a rate. Neon Raptor, when we went to their queue, because there was a massive queue, and I won't queue in, I went to see what was on first. I don't queue to a bar to be told there's only 3 beers on. And so all the good beers had gone on Friday. and there were 3 left, and yeah, to be honest, none of them were very interesting to me. So didn't get any from that brewery. Lincoln Green. We'd already been in one of their pubs, the Sir John Belay's Warren. So I'd had new beers from there, and again, there was a lot of good beers on there, but nothing that was new, so I didn't bother there. Shipston's. Went over for the Red Star, and it sold out. Gutted, absolutely gutted. Black Iris, again, they'd got 5 or 6 lines on, but some of their big ones had already gone the night before, so people were hitting the big beers, regardless of price, I suppose, the night before. Grumpy Fish, and again, when I got there at 5 o'clock, only half the beers were on. So, and it looked like one of the beers was already going when we got there. So, but that was a Lenton Lane collab he did. I'm sure it was Lenton Lane collab. Velvet Pour. So Lenton Lane would have probably given him a few casks anyway to keep him going. But yeah, I wanted the Dungeon Brewing one. Sadly didn't get it. So yeah, gutted. Blue Monkey. Their range of beers was outstanding. Yeah, they had some new beers on the bar. Absolute top class by some distance. Best brewery there. Good range of keg, cask. Pricing was good. Stuff in the fridge. Yeah. Best bar there for me, and quick as well. Good queues. Every bar had big queues. But yeah, best bar. Castle did not get back to, because the fact is, it was so flipping busy. But they had all their cask beers. I've had most of their range before. There were a few newbies, but I've got to be honest, I wasn't interested. So, in the beers that were there, but obviously each to our own. It was full all night, so obviously a lot of people were. Went to Liquid Light. We had their whiskey in a jar, barrel aged stout. That was decent. Their beers were dropping like flies as well, but they did have a lot of keg on at the back wall behind them. So even though the casks were starting to drop, they still had a good amount behind. Magpie. They've got a range of different beers on, all sorts of different. I like that. I like the fact that Magpie have a good range of different beers on. Pricing was sensible too. Pricing is a factor. We had an 8%er, me and the wife both had the same 8%er. Because I wanted to try it, then I'll have that one. I'm like, couldn't you got a different one? I want to review it and review yours, but yeah, it is what it is. And it was a chocolatey stout, but real chocolate was amazing. Chaos Fairy or something. Yeah, lots of good eateries there. Music was bang on all night. Really good, the music. Now, a gripe I've got, and I suppose it was the first. They're in the area around the bandstand. If you know the castle, they used to be on the top lawn. They used to have beer festivals on the top lawn and on there. But it's in a smaller area now. But it's a smaller area, but it's not that small an area. And for me, around that, the breweries were too close to the bandstand. Obviously, Magpie and Lenton Lane and some of them were pushed as far back as they could go. But on the other side, it could have come off the path and gone much further back. And I would have gone much further back and had a much wider area for people to have a drink and enjoyed what was going off. And not only that, it gets very, very windy up there. So they got away royally this year with the weather. Yeah, it was a Baltically cold, but we had no rain. There are 2 marquees. On a year when it's going to be wet, you're going to need another 2 marquees just to keep people there. Otherwise, they're going to go to the pubs in town or go home, you know. But yeah, for me, where liquid light were on that back wall, Castle Rock needed to be pushed up towards the wall, and they all needed to be pushed that way, separating the bars. And if I'm being honest, in the news it says Nottinghamshire. Where were Roebuck Abbey? Where were Beer Mats Brewing? Where was Milestone? You know, other breweries with a Nottinghamshire postcode, Jacaranda. You know, there were many other local Nottinghamshire breweries. It's not a Nottingham City a beer festival, because obviously Lincoln Green isn't Nottingham City, Blue Monkey isn't Nottingham City, and I think that's about it. Grumpy Fish isn't Nottingham City, it's Arnold. So, you know, it's Nottinghamshire. If it's Shire, let's get some of them others in. Whether they'd want to come or not, whether they were asked, I don't know. So there's a possibility they may have been asked, and they just, you know, couldn't get. Maybe, I don't know. But I would have thought they would have wanted to, you know, in the grand scheme of things. There was a cider bar there. I never actually got to the flipping cider bar. My wife says she's seen it, and I never seen it. So, well, I wasn't paying attention properly or what, I don't know. Oh, phone falls. Toilets. Certainly the toilet. I can't speak for the other toilets because I've only seen them once. Never really looked over there again. But the toilets where Liquid Light were, right in the corner, you had all your cubicles, and then you had this urinal thing. And what was happening was the blokes were going down to the urinal thing, and as soon as the door was coming open, they were jumping into the bloody cubicle when there were loads of people waiting. And for me, the urinal needed moving to the other side so that the blokes queue away from the cubicle toilets. I will never go to a urinal because I'm not standing in a trough with other people looking over it. I don't like that situation. I worked on public parks. I worked on the castle and the Arboretum, and yeah, I know what public parks are like. But anyway, but for me, I know there was a pumping system going on, so it would have been just a tweak to put the urinal thing further that way and have all the cubicles together. You split into the 2 queues, and it stops queue jumping, which none of us like. You know, whether it's, and that also, you know, like with the breweries. The breweries been shifted around more room in the centre for people to have a beer and not end up, am I in the queue? And they're just stood there. And there's people waiting behind people thinking that they're in the queue, and they're not. And the confusion that causes. The queues were large, you know, make no mistake about it. They were silly large. On the Friday, I think the queues were horrendous, from what I was told. I think they alleviated it on the Saturday. But yeah, like I said, the beers were running out. I can understand cask beers running out. Keg beer, these are local breweries. Why wouldn't local breweries bring more keg? I mean, when you look at what Neon Raptor, down to 3 beers in, you know, literally, and this is only by about 6:30, 7 o'clock. And it's like, didn't someone think about bringing more beer? Or even cans, merch, you know. I'm not just going to pick on Neon or anyone really. But for me, it was a good event. We enjoyed ourselves. We could not wait any longer to go though. One of our friends, he'd been there for 5. He went at 7. We went about, I think it was about 8 o'clock. We were cold, freezing cold, even though we were all wrapped up to the hilt. Yeah, we'd had enough, you know, cold weather. April maybe, you know, it's outdoor events, it's tough. Obviously no one can control the weather, but I thought the you know, overall it was a good beer festival. Be interesting to see what happens next year, if it goes ahead next year. I know Nottingham Nottingham City Council are a bunch of laughs to work with. I used to work for them, so yeah, I won't say any more about that. But yeah, good to see the breweries working together. I'm sure they had a tough few days, and I'm sure tomorrow they'll all be wanting a weekend off now because they've had a long weekend working. But yeah, you know, it was a good festival, brought a lot of people to Nottingham. The pubs around there were rammed. All the good beer pubs were rammed before, during and after, which is great for the local beer trade, selling good beers. Yeah, so bit of a mixed bag there. You know, a few things that I seen. I'm sure other people seen other things. But on the whole, a good beer festival. Cheers.